morning. It's always fascinating. At least some of you will know that I'm not only economist, but I'm sociologist as well. I did this little bit of philosophy. To see how people, it's students, we all do it, how we deal with rules and how we consider rules. That, for instance, there are tables here and there are even some chairs, but people move them in from another classroom for whatever reason, because they don't want to sit in the front, I guess. Why make life simple if it's possible to make it complicated? I said there is the rule, and of course this is what fascinates me. There are certain rules we simply should and have to accept, and then there are other rules we can deal with. We can take a chair and a table from another room. That's whatever you want to do. But then there are rules, like 3,500 words. It was the limit, the upper limit. If you think you can say whatever you have to say on the topic in 5 words, fine. I doubt that you can do it in 5 words in the essay, but fine. There is no lower limit. The upper limit is simply, well, one of the reasons is my protection that I don't want to read 35,000 words written by everybody. The other reason is that you actually have to try to limit yourself and say, okay, I can write actually 35,000 words, but I have to focus the argument in the way on 3,500. Now, the figure 3,500 is arbitrary. I could have said 3,000, I could have said 4,000. There are chairs here in front and tables. And then there is something else, as I said, the lower limit. It doesn't exist, but you have to make sure that you say what you say, what you have to say, what you think makes an argument. Another rule, and I'm very strict on this, sorry about this, but I just don't want to go through this hassle. Submission, a printed version, and via email. I don't know, I received the last email at 5 minutes past 6 in the morning. I don't know how you managed, if you managed to get the printed version into the office at that time. I couldn't even access the building. Fine. But it is printed copy and email. So 15th was the date, the submission date, and not the 16th, even not in the morning at 5 minutes past 6, or at 1 o'clock or something. I received the entire night, I received emails. So the other thing is, and congratulations, most of you did it, you submitted via your Bangor email account. There are some who simply used QQ. Sorry about this, non-submission. Meaning, if you did so, resubmit, it will be a late submission, and that's it. And late submission means there will be penalty points. There are some rules we simply have to accept. If we like them or if we don't like them. This is important. You should keep this in mind. We don't have to like all these rules, but we are living in a society and we are living under conditions where we simply have to accept what is there in order to cope with the conditions, with the requirements that do exist. Why they do exist, there are many different reasons. I'm not sure if this lecture or the next lecture, 15, I will come to this equality. We can dispute and discuss what equality means, but this is one of the reasons that one rule is there set for everybody. So there won't be any exceptions possible in terms of equality, in terms of the same conditions for everybody. Because you can cope with these conditions. They are not exceptionally high or apply only for some. You all have this account. You all knew about the date, the submission date, and. Another rule, and we don't have to like it. I don't like it at all. But another rule is that we are living in societies, in societies that are what we usually call industrialized, that have an economy that is capitalist. Even in a country like China, the rules of the economy are following the capitalist rules. And it is about profits and profit rates and increasing profitability, increasing productivity. I saw this in a newspaper, Budensauber, I cannot translate it actually. But it's all about this magic thing of Christmas, which they have in the West. And it is part of this story we are talking about, and we talked already about it. So as I said, it's something magic about Christmas, Budensauber. Who earns selling mulled wine and artisan work? It is about the economy of the Christmas market. If you go these days in Europe, wherever it is, more or less wherever it is through the cities, you find Christmas markets. Sometimes it has this magic thing of you get into the mood of Christmas. Sometimes it's simply annoying if you hear these heart-beaten Christmas songs and hammering into your brain and trying to make your way through crowds moving around and not looking around. It is about the economy of these markets. The article was actually pretty interesting in terms of the laws that actually having a small business, it's like the real economy, Christmas market economy. The small little traders, they have a tough life. They hardly manage to get along. And then you have monopolization, centralization, all these things we have been talking about. All this under the heading of the magic Christmas. So what you see, and why I say it, it is that these laws, or this kind of economy, is defining the entire life, including religious pagan traditions, including our mood, including what the market can do with whatever it wants to do, namely making profit. And then it is, I think, very interesting as well, if you go onto one of these markets, and you have the same here coming up in I don't know exactly this time the date, Spring Festival. You have different occasions that have this magic thing around them, and Christmas markets means in different ways, but especially in Budapest you have it, Hungary, craftswork, artisan work. It's nothing that is produced in industrial ways. It's handcrafted. At least quite a lot of it in places like Budapest. And then I found a little notebook which was really handcrafted, individual patterns. And then I went to past another stand, and this was what you see all the year around. It's industrialized production. There's no craftswork around it, but it has there this same kind of connotation. It's craftwork, something special. And I come back to this, talking about the economy behind it. You have the concrete work. This is craftswork. This is what people do, how they produce something. I went once here to a market with a friend, and she knew the shop owner, and it looked all the same. I don't know, little wallets, handcrafted, and they have been handcrafted. But they didn't look like being handcrafted, because they looked all being the same. That's why I said, my friend, she knew the shop owner, and she said, look at this and look at this, and you can see a difference between the two. They look, first glance, they look the same, but if you look closer, you see the difference, because the one person who did it was better qualified or did the stitch in a different way than the other. You can see the difference as well in quality. Concrete work. This is what people do with their hands, with their brain. It's a productive activity aiming on producing something concrete as well. It is qualitatively different. Even if you look at the same thing, at these little wallets, handcrafted, but qualitatively different, depending on if you did it or if you did it. And of course, qualitatively different. In the one case, it's a wallet. In the other case, it's a hand-bound booklet. Specific and individually different work. In which way ever, it's a matter of quality as well. But it's not this uniform, simple work you do without consideration, you do all the same, and basically, in some way, it is at least very similar to machine work. You adjust the machine, and the machine does all the time the same. This is the extreme. Less extreme is that we are actually working like machines. We are following the rules. This is what you have to do. Exactly this. Don't differ in any way. Just do the same thing every hour, every day. It is about work in general and qualitatively similar societal work. And this qualitatively similar societal work is important for us when we have in mind that all this in the framework of capitalist economy, in the framework as well now increasingly of such things of Christmas markets, is about what you see here in the center. Exchange value conveying the exchange of equivalence. And this idea of equivalence is the central point that you have to understand. We have to find criteria when it comes to work, when it comes to products. We have to find criteria. What makes it possible that we can speak of equivalence? We spoke a little bit about it when we talked about GDP. Comparing apples and bananas, it's fine. We don't have any problem there. Or not really a problem. It may be that one prefers bananas, the other prefers apples, but it's still fruit. And in some countries, some places, you find things that would be considered as vegetable, here being considered as fruit. And you can say, okay, it's a little bit stranger fruit, but still, it's close enough. But then we said as well, we talked about shoes, comparing shoes, bananas, and apples. How many bananas can you put into a shoe? This is simply not possible. There is nothing or not much they have in common. There's something in common. We need them. But we need them for different purposes. We need the one thing to eat, the other thing to protect our feet. What else is in common? We said on that occasion, because we were dealing with a GDP, it is the price. Because this is the way how we make them comparable. We say everything, every object, every product, every commodity has a price, and this is how we compare things. And then we accept, actually, that we are talking about the price, and we accept that there is this label of 100 yuan or something like this. And then we have part of 100 yuan is for apples, part of yuan or a couple of 100 yuans are for shoes. But we don't think on that occasion what is actually behind this price, what defines, what allows us to say there is some similarity, some kind of equivalence behind the price. And it is a difficult question, actually, because we say, of course, as well, there is the equivalence. Now I would have to know the exchange rate. If you talk about 100 yuan, and I guess it is about 12 to 13 euro. As I said, I don't know the exchange rate, but there is an equivalence. So if we have 100 yuan, and let's assume this is the exchange rate, 12 euro, that's equivalent. And in some places like Budapest, actually you can pay with Hungarian forint and with euro. They take both. Here in China you won't be able, in Europe in general you won't be able to pay with yuan. Here you won't be able to pay with dollar or with euro. But still, they are equivalent. They stand for the same amount of what? This is the decisive question of what? What is the value? We will go into details later when we talk about money. But I said already en passant, money doesn't have any value, doesn't have any intrinsic value. As Voltaire said, I don't know exactly the wording, but at some stage paper money will turn to its real value, which is zero. It's a piece of paper, somebody prints something onto it, and that's it. It's near to zero, because this piece of paper doesn't really cost much. So what is the value? I'm not talking about the money now, why we accept that 100 yuan is 100 yuan and not a piece of paper that is more or less without value. So what we are talking about is how to make comparable this individual private work and the general societal work. And the core of this is the working time. And there we have a tension, we have the problem, if you want, the challenge to clarify how we can make them comparable. As I said, this lady from the workshop here in China, she said, yes, this is the same product basically, but you can see a difference. You can see a difference in the qualifier, in the qualification of the manufacturer, of the worker. The one was really very good in getting the details right. I don't know what is involved in this kind of craftswork, in producing a very good piece, a little wallet. The other, it's okay, but you can see immediately, if you know a little bit, that the quality is not the same. This is what we can see. Something else that we cannot see is that the one possibly needed 1 hour and the other needed only half an hour. So we have the wallet and we compare the wallet and we say, yes, that's the same, nearly the same, but what can we do with the one person who needed 1 hour and the other person needing half an hour? Let's assume that the difference in terms of quality is very minimal. We can neglect this. So we say it's the same quality, but now we compare the same product, the same item, in qualitative terms, and the one is produced within 1 hour and the other is produced in half an hour. Individual working time, you bring this thing onto the market, you produced it, and you produced it, and you said, well, I needed 1 hour. I want to have this 1 hour paid. And you say, I needed half an hour. I would like, of course, to get the money for 1 hour, but I cannot really justify it because I produced actually 2. In the same time. And this is the general societal working time. It's not an arbitrary figure, not a random figure, but it is the general societal working time. This is what is generally needed to produce this one item, or that is needed to produce the value, a specific value. Going on with the wallets, how much time, we have, I don't know, 60 people here, how much time does everybody need to produce such a wallet? Let's say 1 hour, let's say 20 minutes, and the others are spread around in the middle of it. And then we may arrive at, I don't know, 35 minutes average. That's it. If you are better, good for you. If not, bad luck. And this is then regulated by the price that is paid for it. This is regulated by the competition that if I buy 50 of these wallets, I will buy them, of course, from this person who is faster in producing them. Not by somebody who says, well, I'm not as fast as the others. Give me a little bit more because I need more, I'm slower. So we are looking towards, we are pushed towards this average. And of course there is good reason, to some extent, that I say, why should I work as fast as I can work if I don't have any advantage? If I do the job in 20 minutes, but the average is 35 minutes, why should I do it in 20 minutes? In general, I won't. The exception is competition. If somebody asks me to do it faster and asks somebody else to do it faster, I try to show off and I try to make sure that it is known that I can do it in 20 minutes and that I will do it in 20 minutes. So competition is this factor that one of the factors that determines the general societal working time as well. And then, of course, it is societal working time, not least in terms as well of the conditions. If you use modern machinery, if you use good raw material, if the climate allows a certain way of production, this is a decisive societal factor. Under certain conditions, you cannot do the same work in the same time as under other conditions. if you have a certain standard of tools, of machines, this will of course change the time that is generally needed in this society. And this is what we all find in discussions about wage levels, cheap labor in country A, more expensive in country B. Part of it is exactly this, the conditions under which it is produced. Labor time means that we are, at the end of the day, always looking at the value of labor power. As I said, it is labor, not machines, that produce value. Machines, tools, raw material, this is depreciated. Writing off stuff. It's gone after a while. It transfers the value. But the real creation, generation of value happens by our activities. This is where things happen. This is where value is generated. This pen doesn't do anything. It doesn't create any value. If I or somebody else writes a bestseller out of it and gets millions for it, it's not due to the pen. It's due to the author. It's due to you writing stuff. And you may say, well, this is really an inspiring pen. I like to write it with it for whatever reason. It's still only a very, very small thing. The value creation, the value generation is coming from you. The same with all these tools like mobile phones, like slide presentations. All these things are, of course, valuable and help us to perform. The light helps us to perform if it's needed. A room where we are protected and where it's reasonably warm helps us to perform. We can't have classes in the rain, minus 5 degrees or something. But it doesn't do anything more than helping us to perform. We still have to do it. We still have to do the work. I still have to talk. You still have to write. You still have to ask. And we still have to make something out of it. This is the general determination of value. This goes into different ways into all products. Now I'm talking about the labor power, value of labor power, because this is the core of it. Any other value determination follows the same rules. The value of the means of subsistence necessary for the production and reproduction of the laborer, mind. This is simply, what do I need to survive to perform and to make sure that somebody else can perform in the future. So you have the three things. Just the survival, because we are talking about the laborer, not the labor. The person who is doing the work. And this person has to live. A very simple but very fundamental issue. But it's not just about living, breathing. This is we do even when we sleep. But it is as well about performing during this time. And of course, while we are sleeping, we perform as well. We create, we reproduce ourselves. But we are not producing anything. Unfortunately, all the great dreams we have, what we can do and what we invent, they are gone as soon as we wake up, most of them. So it's not really productive in this sense. And then we have to make sure, in terms of society, in terms of the economy, that there is somebody there tomorrow as well, when we are too old, when we are sick, or when we don't exist anymore, who can do the work. Production and reproduction of the laborer. And this is the average time needed for the reproduction and for the production in terms of the mere existence, as I said, and in terms of the family, in terms of the offspring, in terms of my children, your children, and grandchildren being able to replace us at some stage. And at some stage means when we cannot do it anymore because we are sick, maybe for a short period of time, or when we are leaving for whatever reason the labor market. Then the capability that we have to be able to perform. Whatever this means, and this can be disputed. A friend of mine, she studied biology in Great Britain, then moved to France just after studying, not speaking French. And she said, well, I want to do something useful. I'm qualified. At least I can teach English. That's my native language. And the ministry said, no, you cannot teach English, not even conversational English, because you're not qualified. You don't have the qualification, the certificate to teach English. But you can teach biology. And she was only shaking her head and saying, well, listen, they all speak French. I don't speak French. And you tell me I can teach biology to them. How should I do? I cannot. I can talk it in, I can speak in English about biology. I'm qualified, yes, I have the certificate, but I cannot speak the same language. But I can speak with them in English, I can train their English. Okay, I don't have the qualification for this. Bad luck. So she was not allowed to teach even conversational English. So it is about education, it is about training, and it is about what is recognized as relevant training. They asked me once for a certificate if I speak German. I said, sorry, my parents didn't give me one, but I still managed. So what is recognized, and this is, of course, there are good reasons for it, and then we come to justice, actually. You have to treat everybody in the same way. And to be honest, ask me to teach German, I wouldn't be able to do it. Education. It's the general education. We should not forget this, what we learn without being certified for it. Timekeeping, certain forms of behavior. The general skills we have, social skills we have, and then the training that is specifically needed to do this and that job. And then we have this historical moral element, the social standards, the mode of life. The certain needs we have, certain wants we have, and they are accepted. And they are kind of standard. It's generally accepted that people today have, I'm for a special reason, I'm vague there, that is, people have the right to have reasonably clean clothes, meaning that they can change the clothes. This does not mean you have to have 200 shirts and whatsoever. It may mean still that you have at least 2 to be able to change. It doesn't really define exactly what it is, but it goes beyond a minimum standard of simply surviving. Part of it is actually that today we have the right to have breaks, and that's what we have now.